Yeah, we're pretty excited about this one. We have Charlie Jordan with us today. With Charlie, I haven't met you yet, but I am very excited to hear what you have going on in your world.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
welcome to this.
Thank you.
Um, so basically the format will be the kind of similar as usual. I will pass it to David to introduce Charlie in a second, but yeah, so we'll definitely would love to you know, hear from Charlie about his startup journey. And I'm sure, I mean, I have some questions. David, I know have some questions, and I'm sure some of you will also have some questions. And as we always do it when it's time to do the Q&A, like when you go and you start speaking, just go ahead and introduce yourself, what you do, where you work, that type of things, just so we can keep being familiar with each other. For myself, my name is Pierre Louis, and I am the founder and CEO of Action VFX. We are a visual effects stock footage company based in Johnson City, Tennessee. And we are known as the guys that blow things up, which I think is a good title to have. So yeah, I'll pass it up to David and take it from here.
Sure. Yeah, everybody. My name is David Nelson. I'm the director of the Founders Forge, as well as one of the co-founders of the Brew Fund, which is a loyalty engagement platform for craft beer. And Founders Forge as a whole is really a group of entrepreneurs that have come together to support other entrepreneurs. At the end of the day, we like to say that everybody in our region are the underdog entrepreneurs, and we believe that you guys can truly be successful, and we want to help you guys on your startup journey. And so if you guys ever want to engage or come to other events and everything else, you can find it at myfoundersforge.com. And we'd love to just know what you need, what we can do to help. And we have other additional programming we're going to be announcing very soon that we're really excited about. This region is really powerful and exciting what it can actually be and what it can actually do. And so we're excited to bring all of that community together and do cool events. And this is one of those. And typically, Ro does such a phenomenal job on this. I've just known Charlie for quite some time. I think it was about 4 years ago. We were at, let me drag you over to my other monitor, actually. It's weird, I'm just staring at my empty monitor. There we go. We met at the 3686 conference hosted by Launch Tennessee, which Launch Tennessee is the statewide entrepreneurship organization that supports everybody in the state. And so, Charlie, you were part of the Village 36 as well, or were you just attending?
No. I actually snuck into that conference that year. So.
Oh, that's right. That is right. That's why we're friends.
Yeah.
I forgot.
Yeah.
So I remember we started talking about that. I forgot about that. It's such a great part of this. I mean, what's more entrepreneurial than that is, you know what, we're not even going to go to the conference. We're just going to show up. And I felt like we were two companies. We had literally just launched the Brew Fund the week before. And we were among all these other groups that were way farther along than we were. We were able to pitch on the big stage. And I remember my co-founder, Travis, and I were just like, we had this half the feeling of, what are we doing here? And then we started meeting other people. We met, Charlie was doing SafeSurv. And so over the last few years, we've stayed in touch and communicated and shared ideas. And it kind of goes back to that idea of your network for entrepreneurs sharing ideas. And so can you give, I know you've done a lot since then, but can you give a rundown of why you started SafeSurv and, kind of the early stages of that?
Absolutely. So what SaveSurv is a responsible service platform around alcohol. So its sole solution is an ID scanner that we built. Now, ultimately, the reason why behind it, it goes back to my senior year of high school. A very close friend of mine died in an underage drunk driving accident. And, that was one of those situations that always resonated with me at that time and even like starting college. But I also only really thought it was like a situation that happened to me in my friend circle. I didn't realize it was as big of a problem as it really is until I was at Tennessee Tech in Cookeville, Tennessee. And the high school there had a very almost a mirroring incident with a group of high schoolers there. And that's when it really hit me of okay, wow, this is actually not just a me issue. This is a bigger than me issue. And so at the time, I was in the middle of of my first startup that was like not going well. And so I was in this transition period, and I had met some really cool people at at Tennessee's Homeland Security office. And that was, I guess, early 2015 at the time. Um, and ultimately the vision was make a digital ID, solve a bunch of the fake ID problems. Well, ultimately we found out fairly quickly that there was not going to be necessarily a budget to have one of those built, and it had to be built by the state, or at least, there had to be a project by the state. And so I was like, okay, well, surely I could figure out a private way to do this. And ultimately, I landed on building a responsible service tool for bars, restaurants, places that sell alcohol or even tobacco products, and now cannabis too. And so I put together a team of people that either I knew or hardly knew at school, and we set out to build SafeSurv, which now we've opened up as a free application, and it's used across the United States and Canada. And we've had a few million transactions that have been, upholding responsible service thanks to us and our customers, or, our user base. So it's been really cool. We've gotten to work with some exciting people, with like the PGA and some airports and some bigger festivals. But it's been a really interesting journey for us, and ultimately SafeSurv turned into an even larger opportunity for us, which is, this newest service that we rolled out and bundled everything under THEOS. And so ultimately this opened the door to a really big play for us in the beverage industry to essentially manage the alcohol supply chain from wholesale to retail engagement. And one of the biggest problems that we ran into is we wanted to make our ID scanning tech as widely available as possible. And in order to do that, we had to eliminate the price tag. And there were pieces of SafeSurv's like back-end service that were revenue generators, but it just kind of felt, I never liked the idea of having to charge for it because of its mission was bigger than just generating a dollar. And, ultimately what we were able to do with this, with the new platform is enable SafeSurv to serve its purpose of being a responsible service, arm in this industry. And so now it's completely designed as a like charitable offering within the alcohol beverage industry, which fits well with a lot of our existing customers now at the wholesale level, because a lot of them are really geared towards pushing responsible service. And so ultimately, this has kind of helped us achieve the vision that we were setting out to originally, which is, how many age-restricted transactions can we actually help and assist in, making sure that not only is it easy for those team members that are making those sales to, discourage underage consumption, but how can we also be a part of that greater mission to make sure that, every sale is done properly, and, the situation that happened to me in high school doesn't happen to somebody else. And so, it's been a really interesting experience and a long journey, but I feel like we still have a lot of work to do. So.
Yeah, that's really cool. I think I really have three questions. I'll let everybody else jump in.
Yeah.
The second question really is, how did you find your founding teams? I know it's not just you. You have a co-founder.
Yeah.
How did you go about? Because you talked about in your first company, you went out and just found anybody you were in school with and just built anybody that was interested into it. How did you actually find your team and convince them to join you? And was that more of a payment or just sharing the vision and mission? What did that for you?
So, ultimately it's just sharing what we're going after. the idea was enough for us to get the team originally. And even since then, you know, anybody that we've brought on, whether it's an advisor or, you know, additional, like, you know, working team member, it's really just been people that have kind of followed along and expressed interest and, you know, come back to us several times and say like, hey, you know, our first employee wanted so badly to invest in SaveSurv, and like so badly. And then ultimately it ended up being that like their skill set would be really valuable to us. And we, you know, that was how we got official employee number one.
How big is the team now?
So it's a blend. So there's 3 full-time team members, and then we have about 8 contractors on like biz dev, and then we've got 5 advisors that help us as well. So I mean, you know, we're still very much a lean team, but you know, we're having a lot of fun for sure.
And that's awesome to hear that. When you brought your team on, was that something that would you say that the mission of your business and being so mission driven was really what brought them on? Or do you think it was that compared with like equity or just payment, or, you know, how did that breakdown go?
So, I mean, I really think it was, you know, I mean, I could call them up and see like, hey, what was your real inspiration behind this? But ultimately, you know, it was a blend of, they liked the mission that we were on, and they thought that the project itself was interesting, which I think the second half of that is, you know, especially in tech, is a big part of most teams that I've come across. Like if the work is intriguing and interesting, like that's usually like the priority. And then having a really strong mission that also supports the rest of it is also important. You know, for me, I came in with this vision of something I wanted to see changed, and it just so happened that this technology was the way to do that. So I came into it backwards, but I feel like with a lot of team building, you have to lead with, here's what the project is, and here's what that means on a greater scale. And you know, that's certainly what's worked for me so far as adding people.
Awesome. And if I remember right, you're not a software developer, right?
Absolutely not. No.
Yeah. So you're focused mainly on just the business side. And
I can do Hello World, and that's the extent.
Hey, that's pretty good. One of the, and this is kind of my lead into having everybody else jump in with questions, is that, you know, since we first talked, even just when we first talked and you saying, hey, I snuck into this conference, you've always been just very open and just direct. Sometimes when you talk to other founders or other companies, you know, they're all just grinning and saying, yeah, everything's great. Yeah, my company's amazing. Oh, it's so good. And I've never felt that we've ever been on that level. And I think it's really intriguing how you just are very straight open about your ideas. It doesn't seem like you're worried about sharing anything. And I just wanted to gain your perspective on that and see, why is that? And why is that do you have any advice on that for other startups?
Absolutely. You know, I mean, I think we all kind of see it, you know, people just get really like clammed up about their idea, which is funny to a degree, because like your whole purpose is to share your idea. And so, but I totally get the fearful side of it. I mean, my very first ever startup got totally ripped off by a bunch of students in Chattanooga. And so, you know, like, yes, that's a real thing that happens, but you have these situations where, like, ultimately, if you're passionate enough about like the project that you're starting, then you hit a brick wall, you're just gonna like break through that wall. You're not just gonna stop because it gets hard. And if somebody is ripping off your idea, as soon as they hit maybe not the first wall, but the second, third, fourth, and fifth wall, they're just gonna be like, you know, this isn't worth it. And so like that's why like being like a passionate founder is probably one of the most important things. And that's just something that comes naturally from like the own development of that idea. That's my belief about it. But ultimately, you know, like I wouldn't necessarily be worried about sharing like your concept, even like some of the details that ultimately might not make sense to somebody, but are an important aspect of like the business. If people are asking questions about it, like it's an important part of what you're doing. And so like I tend to be fairly open about a lot. It's not to say I'm not strategic about some nuanced things that I do want to keep relatively hushed, but for the most part, I try to share as much as possible because just the added perspective of somebody else contributing is so valuable, and you never know who you're talking to in a lot of cases, and how that can contribute to, you know, some move down the road. And so, you know, ultimately you just have to believe in the fact that what you're doing, you're going to be the best at, or you believe that you're going to be the best at. And that you're going to ultimately work harder than anybody else that tries to even like think about copycatting. So, I mean, yeah, it's just one of those things where I get it, you know, having like the walls up around what your concept is, but I think it's more of a hindrance than it is, you know, something that you'll actually get any long-term utility out of.
I love that. Yeah. Do you know what happened with that group in Chattanooga or whatever happened? Is that something you can share? You even know what happened to them? Or?
Yeah. So it was kind of funny. So it was that whole story. I was finally getting to the point where I was going to start doing some biz dev, and I started talking to some people, and I noticed like 4 months later, one of the individuals that was going to be doing biz dev had a significant other that their team like presented my concept in some like basically like their university like business whatever competition, and they won, got some money, and were like going to start this up. And so I was like, interesting. And so I just put together like a cease and desist. I pulled off the internet and shot it over, and they stopped. So like, you know, it's just one of those things where like, again, like you put up a wall and, you know, or they run into a wall and they stop if they're not passionate about it. Like, that's just like, you know, that's the, I guess that's the copycat breed, but you know.
Yeah. I love that story. You know, we've seen that on a national level with Airbnb and other groups, and it really is,
yeah.
I think it speaks volumes to entrepreneurs sharing and being open and talking to each other. And
Right.
so with that, I'll shut up. I could talk to Charlie all day. So I want to ask, you know, what questions do you have for him? Really, he can go into more of his other products, what he's done, his startup journey. Like you could have probably already tell he's fairly open book. Yeah. So if you should be able to unmute yourself. I also have the chat open. So if you need to send a chat, make sure yours gets, you know, told, we can look at the chat. But I'll first pass it off to Ro and see if he has questions, what else he wants to do. And then I will be quiet and just learn and listen.
Yeah, I really like what you said, Charlie, about really wanting to, like, you have to believe that you're going to be the best at what you're doing. And I relate to that a lot. I find it super, like, it motivates you to do that extra hour or to keep pushing through those barriers because, yeah, I guess there's a special satisfaction that comes when you feel like you're really attempting to be the best at what you're doing. But yeah, so my question kind of had to do with tell us about how THEOS, you know, got introduced to the picture, because it's like if you have like the main product, which was SafeSurv, and
how did that even develop?
Yeah. And what was the transition like to then go, oh, well, our main product is going to be free and we're going to have this new thing? How did that all come about?
Yeah. So this was probably one of the hardest things I've ever done, like to date in this like whole startup ecosystem. Because like the communication of how like that transition takes place was the hardest thing. I don't know why. I'm not really sure still like what made it so difficult. It was just very, very challenging. But how we got there. So SaveSurv was in use. We were building our user base, and this brewers conference came to Nashville. This would have been in 2017, I believe. Do you remember when that was? I think that was the great. Yeah. Anyways,
Yeah, it was the year before last, so it was 2 years ago. It was
Okay,
17,
all right.
I think. Yeah.
And so we got invited to be at this like brewery launch day, and they were going to be using our ID checking tech. And at the time, we were using it with several wineries and breweries and distilleries specifically so they could use it alongside their tasting information to understand what demographic of customer actually was interested in their products. And so we had started down this small data path, and we met one of the main guys at Goose Island that was like their CFO and COO for several years, managed their whole merger and acquisition to Anheuser-Busch. And we just kind of bumped into him. Well, we started talking. He thought our tech was pretty cool, and he was really interested in this whole data utility that we were putting together behind it. And so for whatever reason, he thought I was in Chicago and I wasn't. And he was like, "Hey, let's set up lunch tomorrow." And so I said, sure, and just drove my ass up to Chicago, had lunch with him. And ultimately he was telling me that what we were doing with this data information would be incredible at the supply chain level, because there's a lot of missed opportunity and just black boxes around what happens to a case of alcohol once it enters a retail account. So there's all this information on how cases are moving into a market, but there's little to zero information on how those cases perform in the market, unless you're looking at big grocery stores. And so that's a big issue. And so we started really diving into the supply chain atmosphere. And it was, so that would have been fall of 2018, spring 2019. I had this wild idea because we had just started doing a lot of point of sale integrations with our ID checking tech. And I was like, okay, what if I can tie the person to their transaction through their credit card or their like unit of payment? And I went to a coffee shop that was using Square later that morning, and it recognized my email address based off of when I put my card in. And I was like, this is possible, cool. So we started diving in, found a way to put that whole system together, and ultimately scoop out every live transaction within the point of sale that we were integrating with, but also understand their inventory and these other interesting units that made sense at the wholesale level. And so we're like, okay, we have all this information. What the hell do we do? Like, how do we productize this? And that's when we started seeing this big movement to restructure what wholesalers call like their front office, which is like their sales and marketing channels. And there was a big push for change on making these massive beverage portfolios, giving them some sort of e-commerce experience. And so we started doing some research. Like, the players in the space were doing like a relatively bad job of maintaining customer relationships. And so we're like, okay, there's a big opportunity here. And then we started talking to some more of these just industry leaders around data and wholesale operations and supplier operations. And that's when we put together the THEOS offering of, this complete system for online beverage ordering between retailers and wholesalers. It also serves as a great way for their marketing arms, whether it's a brand or a wholesaler, to influence the product moving into an environment. And then we really utilize all this point of sale data that we're collecting to really, revolutionize the way that products are able to be placed in accounts. So we can say, okay, if you've got the new Bud Light seltzer, what's the market for that? What type of account does that need to be in? And we can tell them these are the accounts those need to be at, or this is when a draft handle is going to come available. different real estate items for a salesman to be able to really pinpoint, how to increase the amount of product that they're able to move. And so it's been really just like a fun project for us. But yeah, it's by no means in a feature complete state. It's, we're still adding in a lot of, like, for instance, the marketing utility right now. But it's been really interesting to be a part of an industry that's been relatively behind on the times compared to similar industries, and get to be part of this, like, burgeoning tech movement in a space, because you see these people, you see how people adapt to the change. So, like, there's individuals I talked to a year ago that, like, thought they knew what e-commerce was. Obviously they knew what Amazon was, but they weren't sure how it would work for them. And then, 6 months later, they're reaching back out and they're like, okay, we understand what this is, and we need to enact on something like this. And COVID-19 really expedited a lot of that learning at the customer level for us, because a lot of the touchless sales operations became really pertinent. And you had these existing sales organizations that are so, relationship driven, and physical contact is like the way of this market, that they're just kind of left there hanging of, okay, well, what do? We have no way to get in front of our customers. Like, there's a whole list of wholesalers that didn't even have price books put together for their accounts. Like, that's how bad it was. And so we really got to see this whole fiasco like unravel, and be in a position to help a lot of people out, which has been fantastic. So, so that's how we transition. But, like, the interesting part for me is just how we were really able to double down on the responsible service arm of what we do, and say, like, hey, look, like, not only can we help you in these areas, but we're also going to donate our responsible service tech to every account that you manage. And that, like, really created this movement with a lot of our customers too, of like, okay, like, instead of just putting our responsible service budget on making these banners that say, like, drink responsibly, we can actually have a physical, relationship with our accounts to make this responsible service thing more of a tangible, goal for us. And so, so it's been really cool to get to see both sides of our business kind of transition through this period of change for us. And it's been interesting to see too, just how they kind of piggyback off each other, with both services. And so, yeah, so that's the build out of THEOS.
No, that's awesome. THEOS is a lot more in depth than I previously thought. So thanks for sharing that. It's like once you have all this data, yeah, it's amazing what you can do with it. And I'm sure that your clients are really appreciating just the power all that gives them now. So,
like, information is we all grew up with the whole, like, information is power, or knowledge is power, and it's one of those things where, like, I think we didn't really understand it until, like, this whole data generation that's kind of blown up over the past few years. But it's absolutely, it's like, it's wild to see just how influential data can be. Whether it's just putting a product on a shelf, or presenting an opportunity. So
yeah, that's awesome. Well, we would love to hear questions from everyone. Just remember, just introduce yourself first and go ahead and ask away. So we'll leave it open.
Hey, Charlie, this is Carly Goodwin. I'm the COO of Founders Forge and the community manager of Spark Plaza, the space that David's currently at. What has been the most surprising thing about being an entrepreneur? Something that no one told you about, or just really came out of the blue?
Ooh, that's a good question. The most surprising thing, I'd say ultimately it's just like how supportive other founders are. It's like, like nobody really has a lot of time if you think about it, like with just like how much work it is to like open these, these ventures up. But I feel like everybody always has time to like field a couple questions. Or even better example too, just out of the founder network, is like how approachable other like, VPs of companies are. I saw it was the VP of national accounts for Bacardi, shot him a LinkedIn message, and I was just like, hey, I've got this startup in the beverage tech, the tech side of the beverage industry. And I was like, chain accounts, I don't know a thing about them. Can you tell me, like, would you be open to just like hopping on a call and like explaining it a little bit more to me, just so I understand like the current state of chain accounts and that you see? And the guy just like sends me his cell phone number and it's just like, yeah, we can jump on the phone later today. He's like, I'm going to be in the car. And I had like a 45-minute conversation with this guy. And then at the end of it, it's, at the end of the day, here's somebody who's spent his whole career doing this thing and has climbed the ladder. And, I'm somebody that is probably asking these like really just like elementary level questions. And he totally heard me out, like even continued, and even still, like he's still a channel for me to ask questions to. And so, that's something that I never really like expected by any means. And just how approachable these individuals are. I always just kind of felt that once you reach a certain, I guess, management level of a person that you're trying to talk to, they just always assume you're trying to sell them something. And so that was a really eye-opening experience for me, on both sides. So you've got founders that are willing to spend time and just show you like shortcuts around hard problems that they've dealt with. And then you've got like industry leaders that are actually willing to take, 45 minutes out of their day just to chat about stuff that, they know a lot about.
That's awesome.
Hey, Charlie, it's Tom Ballard. Just a quick question. Is your SaveSurv email still active? I want to follow up with you.
Absolutely. Yeah.
I'll follow up with you. I want everybody's time today. Yeah.
And my SaveSurv email forwards to what my current primary check email is. So I'll just respond there. Cool.
Hey, Charlie, Jose Castillo, one of the co-founders of Spark Plaza. I also help out with Founders Forge. I'm curious to know, we're doing a series right now about failure. What is one of your greatest failures in business or life, and how has that helped you?
I'll get it and show it.
Ooh, I love show and tell. That's always good.
I could see his entire demeanor and face like light up, like, oh, failure. I mean, I already know this is going to be good.
You're making me hungry. You keep eating, it looks like.
I know. Hey, I'm standing up eating my lunch. That's the sign of a true entrepreneur, right?
So I have 2 envelopes full of failure. So
I love this.
The tail end of my very first startup, it was wait time management software for restaurants, primarily for the consumer to see what wait times were ahead of time before going out. I had no idea what I was doing, long story short, but that's also how I got looped in with the Tennessee's like Homeland Security Department. They had a proposal out for wait time management of DMV services. So it's like, okay, perfect fit. I'm just gonna reposition this wait time software for restaurants for DMV services. Well, I was late by 2 minutes. Biggest failure. And so I kept these as like, they're still sealed and everything. Just as a reminder, don't be late.
You're going to have to be a guest on our Founders Fail series. I mean, that's amazing.
Don't be late. So yeah, I kept these like it's like one of those things where like, what if your house is on fire, what do you grab? I will grab these. Like this is my like most valuable item.
That is awesome. You got to frame those or something.
I should. Yeah.
That's really cool.
Absolutely.
That's awesome. Thank you, Charlie. I appreciate it.
Yeah.
Matthew, were you trying to ask a question? I thought I saw it. If not, it's okay.
Yeah, I slipped away from me. I'll come back to it.
Okay, no problem. And if you guys want to write anything down in the chat, we'll just make sure we call that, make sure we know you're looking. I think John has a,
Yeah, quick question. I apologize. I had to mute off here just a moment ago, get some lunch. Can you kind of describe how your technology works, particularly the AI component? And if you just answered that, I apologize, and I'll find out another way.
Yeah. So like how it works, as in like, do you want to give me like just like the functionality behind what the AI accomplishes?
Well, first of all, just a high level. How does your product work, and then where does the AI come into it?
Yeah.
If you want to post the algorithm just to the chat, we'd all enjoy it.
Yeah, we put it up there. All right, yeah. So how it works is we'll break it out in a couple different buckets. So we've got THEOS, which is primarily handling like front office utilities for wholesale distribution. So the way that works, for instance, is we've got a CRM sales reps use to sell the books of a wholesaler to retail beverage buyers. We've got the e-commerce portal, which is just like open browsing for retail beverage buyers to find products that they're trying to order and place those orders to those sales reps. And obviously the e-commerce portal and that CRM are both tethered together. We've got the marketing channel, which is the marketing arm of those wholesalers or suppliers to be able to influence those beverage buyers through, preferred listings or, putting together special catalogs or direct notification to specific types of beverage buyers. And then we've got our point of sale algorithm that tethers with SaveSurv. SaveSurv operates as its own thing, obviously, just to scan IDs, driver's license, photo ID card, gun permits, passports, whatever government identifying document. And what happens there is, we take that information, we mask it, we only utilize the non-identifiers like general demographics, and we'll tether that to what happens in that transaction ecosystem of the point of sale. I don't think I left anything out. But ultimately how it works is...
Can I follow up on that real quick? So when you scan an ID, you know the age, you're getting the address, you're getting the picture of the person. Is that correct? You're getting all that information?
More or less, yeah. I mean, the picture information is widely not available, but in some cases for sure, yeah. But it's primarily, think about it as anything that's printed on the document, we do have read on. Now, what's actually usable there is a whole nother story. And so that's why we scrub any PII completely out of it, so that way it's not a factor.
And PII is
personal identifying information.
Okay.
Yeah, I was going to clarify that. If you're not in the tech space dealing with that,
yes,
usually don't.
PII is a big talking subject. But yeah, so what we do is like we're ingesting like for instance out of a retail account. So I'm talking, when I say retailer, it could be a stadium, an airport, it could be a bar, it could be a restaurant, a package store. And what we do is we ingest their inventory, like the products they carry, the transactions, the rate of those transactions, and where SaveSurv is active, we also take in consideration the demographics of those transactions. And we feed all that into, you know, the THEOS engine, which what that does is for like a sales rep at a wholesaler, it gives them recommended items to present specific accounts. It gives their back office a way to forecast what, you know, if White Claws are outpacing their own inventory, then they know, okay, there's an out of stock situation that could happen. So we can forecast those, but we can also provide that same level of forecasting and AI to those retailers. So we can tell retailers, hey, look, based off the class of trade that you're in, so say you're fine dining, these are the products based off of activity in your area you need to carry. You know, these are going to be top movers. If there is an out of stock situation, here's a good product that will sell in the meantime, you know, while you're waiting for that product to become re-available at your wholesaler. You know, we can give them ways to better understand what their beverage program needs to be established as. We can also do like automated ordering, like different things like that, replenishment orders. We can automate those cycles. So those are ways that we leverage like this, all this information just to kind of make a more intelligent atmosphere for alcohol distribution. And you know, if that answers your question.
If nobody else can chime in, I've got another one.
Sure.
Do you have anything that's specific for the wine industry? And I ask that because I have a son who's a sommelier, and I was just curious, because, you know, the idea of suggesting alternative product might be really interesting in the wine industry.
Absolutely. So, you know, we try not to just cater to one. So we work with, I mean, our software works exactly the same, whether you're managing a beer portfolio, a wine portfolio, or a spirits portfolio. So regardless of which category of alcohol that you're specializing in, like the platform works exactly the same for you.
Hello, my name is Jason Markham. I'm a entrepreneur and I'm kind of starting my own company. Do you have any advice for beginners with non-technical experience, such as yourself?
Absolutely. Where do you want me to start?
Just broad overview, just something that nature.
Yeah. So, I mean, ultimately, like, definitely, like, if you're, are you like, what's your concept? Are you going to be doing something more technical, or?
Yes, it's a technical marketplace for the used car industry.
Okay, cool. Definitely find yourself a technical founder. Like that is the best thing that you'll want to do if you're a non-technical person. Just because
why?
Like,
go into the real why of that.
Yeah, I mean, first of all, just like the competing perspective. I mean, you see it a lot too. I mean, I've firsthand for me, but also like I've seen other people. You want to have the business focus and the technical focus to be completely separate, because there's some decision making and some hard decisions that you have to make on both sides that you want to make sure that that's somebody's sole job to handle, but you also want to know that those, like, you want the business to be built cohesively, and like making sure that you can really trust like the technical decisions that are being made as a non-technical person is going to remove so much headache from you. And like, you know, there are times when I'm just talking about ideas with my co-founder. I'm just like, yeah, you know, here's some great things that I would think we should be adding to the roadmap. And he'll basically just punch me in the mouth and say no. And and we go back and forth. But ultimately, like, I carry a totally different perspective into those like technical discussions with Shritesh. And same thing, you know, on the other hand, whenever we're talking about, fundraising, or if we're talking about, building out a specific type of like client relationship, like, he brings ideas to the table too that, just from a different perspective that I'm not thinking about, just because my brain works a different way. And so, I think it's good for two reasons. A, like, it makes sure that whenever you've got like, ultimately like the framework of your business being established, that you have a trusted person that's part of your team that knows what they're doing, and you can just have them handle that piece while you're working on the other aspects of the business. But also it's just that that competing mindset of, having somebody who has a totally different perspective that can contribute to, those business discussions, and, vice versa. When you're contributing to the technical discussions, they've got that competing mindset that, helps propel like a cohesive, collaborative product, or, or organization.
I have a question concerning work-life balance, and it's basically, what is your mindset of work-life balance, and do you feel that you have it?
I struggle with work-life balance a lot. I will definitely be one of those guys that's up at like 2:30 in the morning working on something just so I know that I don't have to do it tomorrow. And one of the things that really helped me is I got into these workout groups at first just to dodge traffic coming back home. And that was the best thing, because it gave me this complete detachment from work. And because it's very easy. I mean, I see it, like, I'm advising a startup right now. I started advising them in April, and they work like crazy. And it's awesome to see, but it's also like, I also know how dangerous that is. And because it's so easy to just like totally lose complete touch with what personal life is. And so, like, my biggest thing is just like, find a hobby that you really enjoy and make sure you carve out that time for yourself, because that is the most important time ever. And I do a really terrible job at doing that. But that's something that this year in particular, I've been really trying to make an effort on. So like a perfect example that really got amplified when the COVID isolation started, is taking my dog to the park every day. Like, there was 2 months that I took my dog to the park every day around 5 o'clock, whether it was raining, if it was sunny, like, it didn't matter. I was just going to be at the park and just completely detach myself from work, leave my phone, like, and just, be in the moment, not working.
Not cool. Yeah. The reason I ask is because I do feel there's, conflicting messages about work-life balance. It's like, personally, I do feel like if you're a starting entrepreneur, it's probably shouldn't be your biggest focus to worry about balancing the work life. Just my personal opinion, just because there's always so much to do to even launch. But it's like, on my own personal journey, I have found that the more you're able to grow a team, the more it's like, okay, maybe the purpose of life is to not work all the time and then die one day.
Yeah,
so then later on, yeah.
I think it just depends on where you're at in your own journey, like and ultimately, I mean, what you value. Like, if work or your project is your life, then like that is your work-life balance, But at the same time, I think you're exactly right. I think there is this like hustle attitude, like hustle at all costs. And it's this idea of like, if you're working to work, but you're not productive, like, it's not worth it, like, that's time that you should be taking and putting towards something that you can be productive in, whether it's like learning to dribble a basketball, or if it's, figuring out, a new language or whatever it is. Like, I think it's being able to self-identify is the work that you're doing productive? Can it be used somewhere else? Or like, can that time be repurposed for something that's going to make you happier than like beating your head into a keyboard? And so I completely agree with that. And like, we could have a whole discussion on like, just like the, like, this like personification of work and what that actually means to like founders in particular, because I feel like there are these like competing mindsets of like, you should work all the time, you know, weekends should be dedicated to your projects, like all these things. And I get it, but I think it's also just prioritizing like what's important to you and like the mission that you're on. Like, I think if you gotta have balance so your headspace stays positive. And, you know, everybody has a different way of doing that, but like a positive headspace should always be, I think, like your priority when figuring out what that work-life balance means to you as a person.
Awesome. Well said.
I love the different mentalities of, you know, wake up at 4 a.m. That's when the most productive billionaires work, but sleep faster, because that's what Arnold Schwarzenegger has a famous speech saying, and stay up all night. You know, don't do everything yourself, but do everything yourself. I mean, it really is a long thing.
Yeah. Oh man, I can talk all day about that too. Doing everything yourself. Let
me ask this. For Ro and Charlie, as you guys have grown, you build out your team. Was it difficult to start empowering your team to do things and for you to step back? Was that something that was hard for you to do?
For me, it was definitely hard, just because I was actually having this conversation yesterday. It's like every single job, because we're a team of 13 of us right now, and it's like at one point in time, every single job, literally, I used to do when it was just me, to some degree. And when you used to have that level of control to everything, it's definitely not the easiest transition to start trusting. But I would definitely advise anyone to work on building that trust, because like it's such a great feeling to know that, hey, I can trust the team to take care of something well. It's just hard to get there, but once you get there, it's awesome.
It is the most satisfying thing ever to hand off something that like you've been solely responsible for to somebody else, but like not even the handoff, but seeing them like do a better job than you at it, like that is the most rewarding thing ever.
All right, real quick, what's the one best thing to build trust on your team? Real quick, both of you.
Oh, communication. Absolutely. Like if everybody's talking about problems, then that's a good sign. Like problems that they themselves are having, not just like problems in general. Because like if you're willing to ask the team for help, or just say like, hey, like I just can't get this done because of X and I need help, like that's the biggest trust builder for me.
For me, I would say is being the bigger man when it comes to trust. And what I mean by that is sometimes I do feel the natural tendency is to say, oh, well, I don't trust you because you haven't given me a reason to trust you yet, so I'm not going to trust you with this project. And one thing I've actually found that actually it works sometimes is to just say, hey, I'll be the bigger person and extend the trust even if I don't see it yet. And then a lot of the time they will surprise you and do the thing really well. And then that trust becomes real trust that you can take on in the future. So it's kind of like forcing myself to, even if I don't fully agree that they can do it very well yet, but just extending that trust. And most of the time I would say it's rewarded.
Cool, thank you.
We got two questions. I know we're running out of time, but Cass had asked a quick note on burnout. Was that how do you guys manage it, or is that something you want to comment on?
Yeah, I was just kind of curious, like obviously, you know, running a startup is sort of an all-consuming task, and burnout slows people down for a long time in my experience. Do you have any particular warning signs you tend to see in yourself or in your team when you're approaching burnout, or methods to prevent it?
Yeah. I mean, ultimately, like, I wish there was just like a something I could just unbox and say, okay, here's your solution for preventing burnout or identifying it before it happens. But I mean, ultimately, I mean, that is something that's a variable that changes based on everybody. I know, like, me personally, like, find those times, just take a walk and detach. Like, those are good ways for me to just kind of unwind. I also find like another one for me too that I've picked up recently is like cooking. It's a weird thing, but like finding a recipe I've never done before and just going out, getting all the things for it. And I don't care if it takes me like 5 hours to make whatever it is and it turns out like garbage. It's just like the whole experience of like actually like being like very like attention to certain details that are not like my project. Those also kind of take me out of that mindset and help me kind of, I guess, like, I just call it like my own like personal reset button. You know, it's just like a time for me to just reboot and start again on the task the next day. But more so like with my team, like, you know, and this is why like the communication piece of like trust, everything is so important for me, because like that's a great way for me to identify like where the team stands on like, you know, is my co-founder getting like absolutely burned on the recent dev cycle that we're on? You know, I don't know that unless we're talking. And it's just one of those things where like, you know, I've known Shritesh one day longer than the SaveSurv team has been put together. And we've lived together for a stint of time. Like, I know him very well. And so I'm able to pick up on some of these things, like these cues of like, okay, he's approaching like his limit. And like, but for him, I just say like, hey, take 3 days, just like go somewhere and don't even touch your computer. And like, you know, it's ultimately like he just needs a vacation every once in a while. Like, we all do. And so like that's, but like I can't necessarily just say like these are the things that work. It's just a matter of like burnout is inevitable for everybody. I feel like that is an entrepreneur. Like, you are going to hit some version of it at some point in time. And that's why it's important to identify like what makes you happy, because like what makes you happy is what's going to get you around those like those challenges. And being able to identify what makes somebody else happy is also, I feel like, a great way to manage that with the rest of the team. I don't know if anybody else has any like things to contribute towards that, but that's just my own spin on it for sure.
Charlie, we're running a little bit short on time. Are you okay to answer a few more questions?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah.
Okay, gotcha. I'll add my only note on that is I've worked with a lot of technical teams, and software people love to burn themselves out. And I've had to learn myself, not just for myself, I've had to learn for other people and start looking for their warning signs. Like my co-founder, I would start noticing that sometimes his code would get checked in later and later in the day. And, you know, if he found a problem, he would dive into it and not stop. And if I, you know, started seeing those signs, I'd be like, okay, just like you're saying, I would have to interject and say, you know, look, you're not working tomorrow. I want to go do something, go ride your mountain bike, whatever you need to do, go do it. But you got to take time, because software developers especially will just keep their heads down and focused on what they're trying to do. And so, but after that, we had Jeff Rainey had a question. I'll go ahead and read it, if that's okay, Jeff. It's kind of a follow-up on Jason's question of how did you structure your work arrangement and partnership between your technical and non-technical person? And Jeff, feel free to chime in if you have any clarification on that.
Yeah. So
that's all.
Okay.
Yeah. So with me and Shritesh is fairly easy. It was like, you know, we both believed in what we wanted to do as far as like a concept. And, you know, it wasn't that we necessarily had like an agreement from day one. It was one of those where we just started working together, and it was like through that process we became friends, and then we got to the part where like, okay, like how do we structure the deal? And for us, it was, you know, at the time we were co-founders, and so we, you know, split equity as our deal. And, you know, that whole partnership, I mean, it was a business relationship ultimately. So, you know, we built the team, we built the product and we built the business to like what it is today. And so, yeah, I mean, our original agreement was just, you know, he was responsible for building out the tech side of the business and contributing to the business side where he felt like he, you know, had, you know, a perspective, and vice versa. You know, I focused purely on the business aspects and the operations side of the business, and, you know, places I could contribute outside of just like general vision on the technical like aspect of the business, I'll contribute to, or just provide like a challenged opinion. And so, I mean, yeah, and that seemed to work really well for us. You know, I don't have a whole lot of experience outside of my own personal like dealings with it, so I don't know of any other you know, ways to arrange those, but I'm sure David or Ro can contribute there as well.
Thanks.
Does that answer your question?
Yeah. I mean, just generally, like that's kind of what I was after, and I'm sure it'll be different in every single situation as far as what the business is and how technical it might be, or how marketing heavy and business side it might be. So
now,
yeah, I was just curious, like how you break those things up, and how do you make sure that everyone's still chugging along?
Oh, okay.
Properly.
All right. Yeah. So we utilize, like, for us, we utilize Basecamp internally. Like, that's our task management software. Like, that's where we do a lot of like the tracking of just general day-to-day items on the agenda. Now on the sales, you know, on the biz ops side of things, then we utilize like HubSpot a lot for our deal tracking and tracking like anything that's relatable to like our whole like sales operations is all tracked through there. So we get some really great metrics to follow along with. We recently started doing a lot of team additions around our cataloging, which is like a really just time intensive part of our business right now, even more so than just like the general bill out of our modules. And those have been, you know, we set up some internal ways to track those just through like some really sophisticated spreadsheets. But, you know, it's just like, you find what works for the project. Like, yeah, one of the things that I've noticed is like you want as few things to actually have to measure as possible as far as like different channels. And so if you can find like, whether it's Asana, whether it's Trello, whether it's, you know, Basecamp, whether it's, there's starts with a G, Jira, like there's these platforms out here that are really great for just having like total transparency on like what's happening, who's doing what, you know, who's responsible for what. And that makes that whole like, you know, team structuring on just work, it makes that very simple. But outside of that, I mean, it's just like, you know, again, it goes back to trust too. You just want to be able to trust your team. Like, I don't want to feel like I have to check these things to know that my team is working. I just want to know that, okay, we're getting the job done and we're like, you know, we're tackling each mission appropriately. Now to get there, obviously we had to work together to set these up. And it was not like, you know, I didn't come in and say, okay, we're going to use Basecamp, we're going to do this thing. It was more of like, everybody's working together. Okay, what do we need to track? What makes sense for us to track? What should we be thinking about for like the next 2-3 employees in this like certain section of the business? Like, what's going to make our jobs easier when those people are on the team as well? Like, you know, so it's more of just like what you see working in the moment to handle whatever challenge you're facing right now, but also like definitely be like thinking down the road of like, okay, does this make sense if we have 5 people or 20 people or 50 people? And if the answer is no, then you might want to find something that is going to scale with you, depending on whatever your goal is. So
one thing to exercise to do early on as a startup that I started doing that really changed things for us too was to get everybody you're working with, go into a room and give everybody a piece of paper and say, and there's no wrong answers, nobody's gonna get upset, nobody's gonna get mad, and say, have everybody's name on the paper and you have to write what that person does. So if it's you and your co-founder, you write the job description of what everything your co-founder does, and they write what you do. You don't share it. And you do that with all of your team and employees and everybody. And it's really interesting because you're trying to get that buy-in early. There's times people may have no clue what you do. And that's bad, right? They need to know what you do because that's how you build trust that they're going to do it. Or like Travis and I, when we did that for us, he looked at me and said, he thought I should be doing these things, and I thought he should be doing certain things. And it turned out he was doing things he shouldn't be doing or he didn't want to be doing either. He just thought he should. And it just creates these nice opportunities to have that interjection and say, no, that's really a waste of your time. That's something that, I should be focused on. That's the business role versus the tech role. And it's just nice because then all the cards are on the table and you guys can handle it that way. And so if you haven't done that before, it's entertaining because they'll say, well, you make everybody laugh or you tell the jokes or stuff like that. But then you get into the heart of all of it. It gets really interesting. Matthew's, I think he's walking away. I was going to see if he wanted to ask his question. Did anybody have anything else? I know he has a pretty good question coming up.
Yeah, let's hope he comes back very soon.
Yeah, here we go.
Yeah.
It may be a minute. He probably had to go grab the baby.
Oh, no problem. Hey, Matthew, sorry. I was just getting ready to try to, do you want to ask your question? I wanted to make sure we got yours out there.
So, Charlie, nice to meet you. I'm Matthew. Now, when you guys first pivoted away from SaveSurv's core products and you had started getting traction, how did you guys start screening partnerships for THEOS?
For THEOS, yeah. So we were very fortunate. We were very lucky too, ultimately, and just like the way THEOS came to existence was, industry personnel coming to us with a problem. And so, that was a unique situation for us to be able to say like, okay, well, obviously these individuals are potential partners for us. And so it was one of those circumstances where we came in with a piece of the technology and we had the people to kind of propel us into the relationships that we needed to make the business case work. And so really we just had to jump in and really study what the problem was in order to build it. So for us, we just leveraged this network of who ultimately became our advisors on the project to get us in front of customers, to get us in front of, additional people to talk to and get more perspective from. So yeah, for us, it was definitely more of this organic, growth situation where we just had these market contributors. But for SaveSurv in particular, that was more of, we came in, we had a problem we were addressing, we built the product, and then started really studying the what the market was saying, which is very backwards for a lot of reasons. But yeah, with THEOS itself, it was driven by our existing relationships. So we weren't necessarily coming in ground floor without knowing anybody, and that helped us tremendously.
You also spent a lot of time at the conferences and other things. You guys were very good at walking up, talking to people, and weren't afraid to ask. I mean, I got to see you guys do that firsthand too. But you guys you build up your network, and you are very good at staying in touch with that network. And so I think that has to be a part of that too.
It's like this whole thing. I mean, I hate this phrase so much. The whole it's about who you know, but it totally is. And I mean, there was I guess it was late October last year. So late October last year, I'd go to this conference out in Las Vegas for this beer wholesaler convention. I'm sitting down, waiting to go in the exhibit hall, and this guy asked me for my phone charger. So I'm like, oh yeah, sure. Here you go. Turns out this guy is the VP of services of this organization we were trying to integrate with. And so he heard me out just on what we were doing, thought it was interesting. And we ended up having 2 dinners throughout that week. And by the end of that conference, he had already gotten us plugged in for those integration procedures that we were we'd already spent probably 2 months trying to get that door open for us. And this guy just made it happen. And since then he's left and started consulting, and he brought us our biggest contract ever came from him. And last October I shared my phone charger with them. So like, you know, it's this whole thing of like and it goes back to like, you never know who you're talking to. So just like talk to them, you know, don't be afraid to share what your ideas are.
Definitely resonate well with that.
Yeah.
Have you guys had to turn away any partners because you felt like they would have been maybe not such a good fit for your product, or maybe could have been a detriment to the brand overall?
Yeah, so I mean, fortunately, I haven't run into that. I guess like the only thing I could think of actually was when we opened SaveSurv up. Our very first, so when we opened SaveSurv up to be a free to use tool, our very first organic download was out of Chicago, and it was a BDSM club, and so that was like the only time I ever like ran into a situation where I was like, okay, like, well, like at least they're being safe about what they're doing, and and so it's one of those things where like fortunately we haven't been in a situation to ever like have to like turn down a partner or a customer. Not to say that couldn't happen at some point. It's just we haven't really come across it yet. And I think part of it is just like we have our niche like dialed in, where unless somebody just like really had some like view that we just didn't stand for, then like that would really, I think, be the only problem.
No, sweet. Well, we are going to have to wrap up now, guys. And thanks so much, Charlie, for being here and being fine, answering a few more questions with us.
Yeah,
being a bit longer. Like this has been awesome. It is always such a privilege to really hear different founder stories and advice and things like that. And you did great.
I'm so glad that you guys are doing this too, because like, you know, I feel like there's not enough of this stuff, especially on like the local level, you know? So yeah, this is awesome. Congrats to you guys as well.
Well, thank you. And yeah, thanks for everyone that joined us. This is awesome. You know, it's always great to meet with you all. And I mean, I don't want to jinx it, but I'm pretty sure next month we will be able to meet face to face again. So I'm really looking forward to that. So let's definitely stay in touch and look out for the announcement for that. With that said.
Yeah, I might add just if we do have in-face, we will also have the Zoom option to be able to still participate, or we'll live stream. We'll do something just in case you can't make it. And yeah, really, Charlie, thanks so much. I really appreciate you jumping in on this. I mean, it's phenomenal listening to your story and everything you guys are doing. It's been cool to see it grow. And we hope you'll continue to be part of the community and be part of some other panels and other events we have doing.
Yeah, I mean, I didn't know I'm out in Nashville, but I'd be happy to continue lurking on your Zooms. So yeah, that's great.
Nice. Well, have a great one, everyone.
All right. Have a great day. It's been awesome. Thank you guys so much.
It's good to meet you all.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye, guys.